you so much, Indivisible Westchester. Thank you, our moderator. This is harder than it looks. Thank you, my colleagues and friends. Look, we're not going to agree on everything. I will tell you what, though, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say, if you want somebody to stand up to Donald Trump, you have to have somebody who has beat Republicans in real races, and somebody who has stood his ground as a gay man in a Trump district with an interracial family and has come out on top, and who has gone on the floor every day in the House of Representatives for 6 years and has won the important fights, whether we're talking about saving the Affordable Care Act, whether we're talking about stopping the Muslim ban, whether we're talking about defending the rights of LGBT people, whether we're talking about sticking up for programs like Social Security and Medicare, and the Medicaid with that is so critical in the state, and the millions of people under expanded Medicaid who are getting help fighting the opioid and heroin epidemic. Those are fights we have been winning, and I have been in that fight. And by the way, that bipartisanship score, that's a feature, not a bug. I'm pretty proud of that. If you want to know why we are going to have real legislation fighting Lyme disease in the Hudson Valley, it's because I did that. If you want to know why you're not going to have oil barges on the Hudson River polluting up the river, it's because I stopped them. If you want to know why the veterans are going to finally get notified, the service agencies proactively when they come home so they get better care, and we reform how we do veterans care in this country, it's because I passed that bill. I've not only beat Republicans, I've gone to Congress and got things done. You know what that's called, Zephyr? It's called doing your job. And I am proud that I have done my job and delivered for the people who I represent in the Hudson Valley. But I'll tell you what, if you put me in the fight with Donald Trump, you are going to see the tenacity and the grit and the skill that I have used to win these fights in Congress at play in that most important fight of all, because families like mine are in the crosshairs. And I don't need a lecture about what Donald Trump represents as a threat. It's families like mine, ladies and gentlemen, that are going to be the first ones hurt if we don't start winning these fights again. I have won these fights. I can do it again. Please, give me a chance to do this job, and you will be proud of the work I do in this office. I need your help. I need your vote. I am respectfully asking for you to vote for me on September 13th. Thank you very much, and together we're going to win this. Thanks.
I want to thank all the candidates, and that concludes the event. And there's so many long points I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Campbell, on behalf of the 7 activist groups who are tonight's sponsors, I want to welcome you to Where They Stand 2018 Candidate Forum. Yay! We have with us tonight all 4 Democratic candidates for New York State Attorney General. Possibly the only time they'll be together on the same stage before the primary election. So we're very fortunate. We also have with us tonight several elected officials. Michael Sabatino, Yonkers City Council, is here. Chris Johnson, Westchester County Board of Legislators, is here. And Nancy Barr, another Westchester County Board of Legislators, is here. So thank you for all joining us. This, of course, is meant to lead up to the Democratic primary. The date of this year's primary is unusual. It's September 13th, a Thursday. Since the anniversary of 9/11 and the Rosh Hashanah holiday are on Tuesday, Thursday the 13th was selected as primary day. So tell everyone you know it's Thursday the 13th and get out and vote. The Office of New York State Attorney General has grown in importance as a bulwark against the toxicity of the Trump administration. We are delighted that we have 4 excellent Democratic candidates for Attorney General, and we want to thank them all for engaging in public dialogue on crucial issues in our government and our society. The candidates will be questioned this evening by our moderator, Damon Jones. Damon Jones is a 28-year veteran of the Westchester Department of Corrections. He's a union delegate for the Westchester Correction Officers Benevolent Association, the New York State representative of Blacks in Law Enforcement of America, and co-chair of the NAACP White Plains Greenberg. He's on the Criminal Justice Committee and co-founder of the Westchester Black Political Conference. Jones is also the former Northeast Region President of the National Black Police Association. He has given expert testimony on police policies and procedures for numerous organizations and served on the NAACP Legal Defense Fund Advisory Board. You can hear Damon on People Before Politics Radio live on Facebook, InTheMixRadio.com every Sunday, and on the Black Westchester Power Hour, the first Monday of every month from 11 a.m. to noon on WVOX AM. He's a busy guy. Ladies and gentlemen, Damon Jones.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I want to thank everybody to come out that's coming out tonight to hear discussion of a very important position in New York State government. Before I introduce the candidates, I went on the Attorney General's website, and there's an explanation of the office on the website, and I think some people have not read it, and if you have not read it, you should read it, but I'm going to read it for you tonight. The New York State Attorney General, head of the Department of Law, the Attorney General is both the people's lawyer and the state's chief legal officer. As the people's lawyer, the Attorney General serves as a guardian of the legal rights of the citizens of New York, its organizations, and its natural resources. In fulfilling the duties of the state's chief legal counsel, the Attorney General not only advises the executive branch of the state government, but also defends actions and proceedings on behalf of the state. The Attorney General serves all New Yorkers in numerous matters affecting their daily lives. The Attorney General's office is charged with the statutory and common law powers to protect consumers and investors, charitable donors, and public health and environment, civil rights, and the rights of wage earners and businesses across the state. The Attorney General authority also includes the activities and investigations of State Organized Crime Task Force and Medical Fraud Control Unit. While the Attorney General acts independently of the governor or state agency may request the Attorney General to undertake specific criminal investigations and prosecutions. The legal functions of the Department of Law are divided primarily into 5 major divisions: appeals, opinions, state counsels, criminal justice, economic justice, and social justice. Over 650 assistant attorney generals and over 1,700 employees, including forensic accountants, legal assistants, scientists, investigators, and support staff, serve in the Office of the Attorney General in many locations across New York State. So that's what we're talking about. The person that will lead the Attorney General's office in these functions as the people's lawyer. I would like to introduce the candidates. They are in order A, B, C, and D, and I would read them in that order. First, Sean Patrick Maloney has represented New York 18th District in Congress since 2013. He was born in Quebec, Canada, and grew up in Hanover, New Hampshire. Sean Patrick Mahoney has earned his BA and JD from the University of Virginia. He served in the Clinton administration as Senior West Wing Advisor and White House Staff Secretary. He was also the first Deputy Secretary to New York Governors Eliot Spencer and David Paterson. Sean was an executive in a private equity firm and was elected to Congress in 2012, defeating Republican Nan Engler. He is the first, there you go. You get clapped for being a Republican in here. He is the first openly gay person elected to Congress from New York, Mr. Sean Patrick Maloney. Next up is Letitia Tish James, is currently serving in her second term as public advocate for the city of New York, where she acts as a watchdog over city government agencies and an advocate for consumers. She is the first woman of color to hold a citywide office in New York City. Tish James also served as New York City Councilman for the 35th District in Brooklyn. Before that, she served as head of Brooklyn Regional Office of New York State Attorney General's Office. Tish began her career in public defender as a legal aid at the Legal Aid Society. She is a graduate of Howard University School of Law and Lehman College and resides in Brooklyn. Ms. Letitia Tish James. is Zephyr Teachout. Did I pronounce it correct?
Yes.
All right, make sure. I practice all day on that one. Received a BA from Yale and graduated summa cum laude from Duke Law School, where she was the editor-in-chief of the Law Review. She started her career representing people on death row and co-founded an organization dedicated to training young lawyers in underfunding defense trial work. Zephyr Teachout is the author of a book on history of anti-corruption laws in the United States, Corruption in America. She is Associate Professor of Law at Fordham University and a constitutional law expert. Zephyr has run for statewide office before, losing to the Democratic primary to Andrew Cuomo in 2014. In 2016, she won the Democratic primary for Congress in the 16th district, but lost to John Faso in the general election. Ooh, that's it. Ms. Zephyr Teachout. Last but not least, Alicia Eve was born and raised in Buffalo. She graduated from Smith College, the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, and Harvard Law School. Alicia served as a counsel to then U.S. Senator Joseph Biden, working on critical civil rights and social justice, including immigration and the implementation of Violence Against Women Act. She was also counsel to then U.S. Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton. She served as Deputy Secretary for Economic Development for New York and was Chief Economic Development Advisor to Governor Andrew Cuomo. Leticia is Vice President. I messed that up, but I think
That's okay.
Did I get it right? Did I get it right?
They know who I am.
Okay. She was Vice President of Government Affairs at Verizon for New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, and serves as the Commissioner of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Ms. Leticia Eve. Okay, here's how tonight's discussion will work. Each candidate will have 2 to 3 minutes to make an opening statement. I will then ask a series of questions, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. Then finally, each candidate will have 2 to 3 minutes for a closing statement, and we will rotate who goes first. And we will start off with
Drum roll.
candidate A, Mr. Maloney.
Ready?
Hey,
Hey, everybody, good evening. You ready?
yeah, go
All
ahead.
right,
Go ahead.
Canada Day. I like Canada Day. It's great to be in Westchester. Thank you so much for hosting. Thank you, Westchester Indivisible. I want to say it's great to be on stage with my friends, Leticia James, Zephyr Teachout, and Alicia Eve. I know all these people. These are good people. These are good public servants. They have done a lot of good work. And I hope that nothing in this campaign detracts from the fact that we agree about a lot, and we are all united in trying to beat Donald Trump. And I'm not going to say a negative thing about any of them. I want you to know if any one of these people beats me in this primary, I am going to be there the next day working my butt off to get him elected Attorney General in New York. And I hope they will all support the winner of this primary too. But check it out. You know me, boy, my favorite introduction is the man who beat Nan Hayward. That's what truth is, we beat her twice. And I also want to say, because I'm in Westchester, thanks for beating Rob Astorino. Great job. Democrats need to win more. We need to stop whining. We need to start winning. Let's beat Donald Trump. Let's win elections. That's what I do. And you know me as a 3-term member of Congress who has beaten 3 conservative Republicans in a row in a tough part of the world, the district that voted for Donald Trump. And I'm very proud of that. I couldn't have done it without you. The fact is that a lot of my life, the simple truth is I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be somebody who was on the inside like this or a member of Congress. You know this. I am the first openly gay member of Congress in the history of the state of New York. Never happened before. Which means, yeah, you can clap for that. And it wasn't a given that a gay guy with an interracial family was going to beat Nan Hayward. But we did it, didn't we? We did it. And if I can beat Nan Hayworth in the Trump district, what the hell's wrong with the Democratic Party? We can win everywhere. Don't tell me we can't win elections. Good gracious, right? It can't be harder than this, right? And I get to say what no candidate for Attorney General and no member of Congress in New York has ever said before. No guy has ever been able to say, which is my husband is here tonight, Randy Florky. I'm very happy about that. Our whole career together, our whole lives together, you know, we have adopted 3 children together. We have been doing this since 1992, ladies and gentlemen. We had a 22-year engagement and a 4-year marriage. So for 26 years, all you guys who think you had it tough, let me tell you what, try to be engaged for 22 years, ladies. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. The truth is my whole life, I've been able to get on the inside, but I have always felt that it's my obligation to fight for people who don't have their rights. Whether I was in law school working with migrant workers out in rural Virginia, or at the law firm fighting for tenants in a class action pro bono, or for getting political asylum for those folks who needed it. Whether I was in the White House, where I was on the White House senior staff, and no one like me had ever served there before, but I spent my time fighting for hate crimes victims, and getting us out to the funeral of Matthew Shepard, and representing the pro bono when I got out of the White House. And when I went to the governor's office, I focused on writing the first marriage equality law in the history of New York, and we introduced it in the legislature and got it passed a couple months later. I'm very proud of that. We could have focused on other stuff. That's what I focused on. And when I was working to get a SUNY CUNY endowment of billions of dollars that would have revolutionized public education and higher education here in New York. And now that I've been in Congress, I've been on the front lines for 18 months against Donald Trump and 6 years against the Tea Party. And whether you're talking about the assault on the Affordable Care Act, or whether you're talking about the Muslim ban, or whether you're talking about LGBT equality or the environment, I have been in the fight, and we have done a lot of winning, and we have been playing good defense. But I'll tell you what, I don't want to be on defense anymore. I want to be on offense. That's what this race is about. That's what this year is about. And with your help, we are going to make some real progress and win some real victories. And I look forward to discussing the issues with all of you tonight. Thank you for being here. Look forward to taking your questions.
So my name is Letitia James, and I want to thank all of you here today for all of your progress in resisting Donald Trump. All I know all throughout my life is a fight. When I was around 11 years old, my mother took me to criminal court because my brother was arrested. When I went into criminal court, everyone in the courtroom did not look like me other than the defendants. It was that point in time when I recognized and understood the point of justice and standing up and fighting for your rights. When the correction officer said to my mother, "Sit down, shut up, don't ask me where your son is," I vowed at that time, all throughout my public career, that I would commit to public service and to doing one thing, and that is following and serving justice. So as a former public defender, I represented countless number of children in the criminal justice system. Because when you're at your lowest, you still need someone to defend your rights. As a former assistant attorney general who sued predatory lenders, who was part of an investigation into stop and frisk practices, and also consumers, representing consumers who are being preyed upon by unscrupulous businesses throughout the city of New York. I then went on to work in the state legislature for 10 years where I drafted and negotiated laws. And then as a city council member representing in Brooklyn, I went up against one of the most powerful developers in downtown Brooklyn for violating eminent domain abuses, for the worst team in the NBA. And it's okay if you've been to the arena. But I had to stand for them. I also sued Mayor Bloomberg for the extension of the 3rd term. I've sued Mayor de Blasio several times. And I'm the only candidate who's running for Attorney General that has sued the governor of the state of New York, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And now as the public advocate of the city of New York, I've passed more laws than all previous public advocates combined, including banning salary history, because equal pay for equal work should be more than a slogan. It should be actualized. Women deserve to be paid the same as men for doing the same job. And then lastly, I have changed the office of public advocate. We have filed more lawsuits. And I have not only acted on behalf of your interests, but I have stood against Donald Trump. I've been a plaintiff and filed a number of amicus briefs. Muslim ban 1, Muslim ban 2, Muslim ban 3, the LGBT, fights against Title 10, fights against Planned Parenthood. Because what happens between me and my body and women in this room is between us and our God and no one else. And lastly, as the public advocate, I retailers, and we won. And as a member of the NYSERS board, again, we divested from fossil fuels, and we won. What we need now more than ever in the Office of Attorney General is an Attorney General who can fight back and who's not afraid of bullies and who speaks truth to power and who has a consistent record of getting things done and who wakes up every day focused on justice. Thank you.
Good evening. I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much to the incredible groups that organized it and got all 4 candidates here. Thank you, moderator. A special shout out for those of you who are working to elect Alessandro Biaggi. I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting this race, but what I want to talk about tonight is law. I am a constitutional and anti-corruption law expert. I started my career as a death penalty lawyer representing the most hated people in society, having to use creativity and tenacity to dig up difficult facts and unused laws to be able to stop the train that was coming towards my client and stop the state from killing him. Right now, we are not in normal times. Donald Trump is posing an existential threat. We have a moral crisis in this country. We have a democratic crisis in this country. We have a constitutional crisis in this country. And yes, we need and are going to have a blue Congress in 2018. But there are things the New York State Attorney General can do to take on the threat of Donald Trump that nobody else can do, and that is what I will do as the next Attorney General of the state of New York. Ever since he got elected, since a week after he got elected, I have been working with the top lawyers in the country, building a legal strategy to take on Donald Trump's businesses. And 2 weeks ago, we had a major victory in district court, in federal court in Maryland, and the judge there cited my research directly. We're talking about winning against Donald Trump. We gotta follow the money. Investigate his businesses. Just today, I don't know if you want to call it a victory, but I have spoken out about prosecuting ICE agents who are violating the law, raping people, causing people to die in detention, saying that no one is above the law, and explaining how, in New York State, our hands aren't tied. We can actually prosecute criminal behavior, and we must make that totally clear. And because of that, I was on Fox and Friends, and Breitbart, and NRA TV, because they are scared about what's happening when I'm the next Attorney General of New York State. The 2 most important things, and I will talk further about the other parts of the job, but one is the deep expertise, and the other is independence. And when I'm your Attorney General, I promise you that I will answer to no one but the people of the state of New York, my conscience, and the law. Thank you.
Good evening, Westchester Democrats. It is an honor to be here. My name is Licia Eve, and I am running as the most qualified, experienced candidate ready to be the effective Attorney General we must have on January 1. I am a daughter of this state. I have only called New York my home. Born and reared in Buffalo, product of the Buffalo Public Schools. As was mentioned, I went to the Kennedy School and Harvard Law School. My first job out of law school was clerking for the first African American to serve a full term on the state's highest court, the Honorable Fritz W. Alexander. So for the first 2 years out of law school, I had discussions with jurists on the state's highest court about the most fundamental legal issues of our time, based upon the state's constitution, state statutes, and the federal constitution. went to Washington, was a litigator in federal and state court. The case that I am most proud of in my almost 28 years as a lawyer was a case where I represented with 3 other young women associates, all women incarcerated in District of Columbia prisons, against the District of Columbia because of prison conditions they were living in. As you can imagine, when you sue the government of the most powerful city, of the most powerful nation on the earth, you get a lot of pushback. But we stayed the course. I stayed the course because my client had her legs shackled to a bed after she brought a child into this world. 2 legs, 1 arm, in the nation's capital, in the greatest democracy on earth. I am proud to say we not only fought, we won. And this case served as a precedent not only for the District of Columbia, but for prison reform across the country. As was mentioned, I had the honor of serving as a counsel to Joe Biden, advising him on a range of issues, and most especially implementation of the Violence Against Women Act, which he authored working with hundreds of organizations across the country, helping survivors of domestic violence and physical assault. Worked in the trenches with Hillary, fighting for reproductive rights, fighting for civil rights, fighting for good judges, fighting against the assaults on our rights, fighting against bad judges. Served as the first woman and person of color in the state's history to be the Chief Economic Development Advisor to the governor of our state, overseeing 11 agencies in state government. When I left the government, they split my job and gave it to 2 different people. And I proudly work for a company now that puts about 20,000 New Yorkers to work every day while serving as a volunteer capacity as a commissioner of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. The breadth and depth of my experience makes me best prepared to continue the good work, to fight against the assault on our rights by Donald Trump, to deal with the bad actors in the state, and equally important, to help move our state forward on so many fronts where we should be leading and not following. So I look forward to the discussion tonight, and it is with great respect and humility that I hope that I earn your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the wonderful openings, and we're going to start with the questions. Each candidate has 2 minutes to answer the question, and we're going to start off the questions, the round of questions. We're going to start with Tish and work our way back to Patrick. The first question is Trump business. In June, this is the question now, in June, the New York Attorney General's office sued the Trump Foundation, accusing it and the Trump family of sweeping violations of campaign finance laws, self-dealing, and illegal coordination with the presidential campaign. What other actions against the Trump Foundation or other business dealings that violate the emolument clause should be considered, and what can be done to make his tax returns public?
So first, we want to congratulate Barbara Underwood for bringing that case. And as the next Attorney General, I proudly will work on side by side with Barbara Underwood. As she no longer is a Solicitor General, she will be moved into the Executive Office to continue the work of this one case that she brought on the emoluments violation. But it's important to understand that there are other businesses in New York City and in New York State that are owned by Donald Trump that require an investigation. In addition to that, we should really focus on those children right now who are separated from their parents. I am one of the plaintiffs representing some of these children. And right now, we were successful working with legal services and with the ACLU. And so now, no child in New York State can be removed without giving notice to legal services and to the ACLU, and that is a major victory. We should not live in a country where children are separated from their parents. We should also go after Donald Trump because we will not and should not pardon any one of state crimes in New York State. And so we have got to close the pardon loophole, this piece of legislation which is pending in Albany. And as someone who has worked in Albany, who has a relationship with both the Senate and the Assembly, and who has already spoken to both leaders with regards to that bill, we've got to negotiate that bill, and I'm confident that when Letitia James becomes Attorney General, that bill will be passed in the first 100 days. It's important also to understand that we need to go after Donald Trump because we recognize that he refuses to release his tax returns. And as was mentioned, we've got to follow the money. But I am right now focused on turning the House blue and making sure that these midterm elections, that we have Democrats in Congress. And last but not least, my focus right now is making sure that the United States Supreme Court, that we provide steel to the backbone of these Democrats, and that this individual, who will be the next Supreme Court justice, be denied. We need to delay and deny this individual from being a Supreme Court justice. So we can bring a number of cases against Donald Trump, particularly in violation of our Constitution, but most importantly, what we've got to do is focus on turning our country from red to blue. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. There are about 4 key legal strategies that we need to pursue to go after Donald Trump's businesses. When you go after systemic illegality, you have to go after the money and do intensive financial investigations. That's true of the mafia, and that's true when we see how Donald Trump is using his office really as a kleptocrat to enrich himself in his office. So number 1, New York is not right now part of the emoluments lawsuits. I was one of 2 experts in the country of emoluments before he took office. I literally wrote the book on corruption and anti-corruption laws. And I've been advising attorneys general in other states on bringing this suit. We had this major victory a few weeks ago, but there's a gaping hole in it. The victory could lead to the divestment of the Trump Hotel in DC. But we need the divestment of all the businesses, and the businesses are located here in New York. I encourage Eric Schneiderman to pursue this, and as Attorney General, I would pursue that. Number 2, the New York Attorney General has a responsibility under both Executive Law 6312 and 1101, our business laws, to oversee the integrity of the businesses in New York State. So this comes from New York State law. What that means is the New York Attorney General has the authority and responsibility to investigate systemic illegality in businesses that are located in New York. The very hub of these 500 businesses are here, of the Trump Organization, are here in New York. And we should be pursuing that. That is something I spoke about starting in early 2017, and I've worked with top litigators around the country on explaining how the New York State AG can pursue that. Number 3, we need a criminal investigation along with a civil investigation into legal violations in the state. I see this as central to the job of the next Attorney General, because this is the bulwark against radical kleptocracy at the top. Thank you.
I also want to applaud the tremendous work of the current Attorney General, Barbara Underwood, in terms of her now litigation against the Trump Foundation. The emoluments clause is actually something that I'm intimately familiar with long before we heard of somebody named Donald Trump, because as the advisor to 2 United States senators, the emolument clause actually governs not only the conduct of the president, but it also governs conduct of members of Congress. So members of Congress can't accept gifts from foreign governments. So as they're traveling around the world, if they get a gift from a foreign government, there's a process that every appropriate Senate office has where they record those gifts and they turn them over to the Library of Congress. So it is a provision that I'm intimately familiar with, because it was my job to help a member to make sure that she complied fully with that clause, and that there was sufficient record keeping to make sure that she did so, and I'm proud to say that she did. As a litigator, as a very aggressive litigator, what I would do as Attorney General is conduct an extensive investigation of his businesses to the extent that there is a sense that there have been violations of either civil or criminal law. I have deposed many a corporation. As a law clerk to the state's highest court, we dealt with lots of business crimes. We dealt with lots of civil litigation involving corporations. And one of the key things that you do as a corporate litigator and I have that experience in spades, is you follow the money, and the best evidence about where the money is in a tax return. Look what we're dealing with right now. Bob Mueller is focused on what? Paul Manafort, and whether he properly disclosed all of his income in his tax return. So it is hard work, but it's not rocket science. If you've been a litigator and you've seen the inside of a federal courtroom, you know that the discovery process is a powerful tool to get at the president's tax returns when there have been sufficient facts to support violations of either civil or criminal law under New York State. As Attorney General, that is the path that I would take to get that information. Thank you very much.
Well, the number one thing the next Attorney General or any of us is going to do to hold Donald Trump accountable is keep Bob Mueller on the job. We need to protect Bob Mueller. And the number one arena where this fight is being waged, ladies and gentlemen, is in Washington. And I'm here to tell you, I am the only person on the stage with any Washington experience at all. And that is a critical issue right now when you think about the work of the next New York Attorney General. And what is that experience? Well, I started out working on the senior staff at the White House, and in that position I had a code word top secret national security clearance and routinely read all the national security information with respect to Russia. As a member of Congress, I routinely received classified briefings from our nation's top intelligence officials. I am deeply immersed in the details of the Russia investigation and all of the issues before the Intelligence Committee in the House. In addition to that, we received briefings directly from Rod Rosenstein. I know exactly the work they're doing. I understand exactly what we have to complete if that work is interrupted. I can tell you right now, Bob Mueller is in the hunt. He has already demonstrated that a bunch of Russians conspired to break our laws, and what we want to know is who the Americans were who were conspiring with them. And I am going to get to the truth of that. But I hope Bob Mueller gets there first. But the New York Attorney General better be ready to stand in the breach if Donald Trump moves against Rod Rosenstein, moves against Bob Mueller, or pardons himself or others. And we should close that loophole in New York law. It's important how you do it, but we ought to do it. But you better have somebody who understands the federal players and what we're up against. Just last week, a bunch of us in the House fought tooth and nail and stopped the Freedom Caucus from impeaching Rod Rosenstein. That was last week, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're going to fight Republicans, you better have someone serious to beat Republicans, and you're going to want somebody who beats Republicans, and that's what I have done since you have known me in public life. And if you give me this chance, I'll tell you what, we are going to take a stand. And if Bob Mueller needs backup, I'm ready to be there. Thank you very much.
The next round of questions, we will start with Ms. Teachout and is criminal justice reform. This past year, New York finally righted the long-standing injustice by raising the age of criminal responsibility from 16 to 18 years of age. State attorneys across the county are using various approaches to address systematic criminal justice issues such as mass incarceration, policing practices, and changing in criminal sentencing. What approach will you use to attempt to reform the criminal justice system in New York?
Thank you for the question. This is something that is central to what I want to do as New York Attorney General. It's really critical that we deal with this ongoing crisis. I was just talking about the Trump crisis. We've had an epidemic of mass incarceration for decades now, and we've got to change it. As a death penalty lawyer, I spent a lot of time in prisons and jails. I saw up close what mass incarceration looks like and what structural racism looks like. I believe we need to cut our incarcerated population in half by 2030. I believe it is critical that law enforcement be the leading voice against what is happening in our criminal justice system. As much as a third of the people who are now incarcerated have not been found guilty, they're there in jail, not prison, they haven't had a trial, and they have to pay cash bail. That is not law or justice. To say how much you can pay determines how many days you spend in a cell with somebody watching you. We have to end cash bail. New York State's discovery laws are so bad that they're some of the worst in the country. What that means is, well, you are have the right to know the witness statements against you. That is wrong. We need discovery reform. We need marijuana legalization. And we need to make sure we don't just look forward but backward at all the people who have been imprisoned because of unjust and racist laws. We need parole reform. We need to work on re-entry. And we basically need to understand that white-collar crime has to be our priority. And I don't take corporate money, so I'm ready to do that. But we cannot say that we stand for justice if we have the current system of criminal injustice that we have now. Thank you.
I first wanted to, because this is about sharing facts, I wanted just to, with all due respect, correct something that one of my opponents, Sean, said that was factually inaccurate. He mentioned there was only one person with Washington experience. As I mentioned, I represented hundreds of women incarcerated in District of Columbia prisons against the District of Columbia in federal court. We won in federal court. It was appealed to the appellate court. We won there. They tried to take it to the United States Supreme Court, and our rulings go. And as I mentioned, I proudly worked for both Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. And so I have a very good sense, better than I believe, than any candidate running, of how to fight in Washington and how to win. But to the question at hand on criminal justice reform, this is not a theoretical discussion for me. This is very personal. It's my family and it's my life's work. Many of you know that my father, Arthur Eve, who served with distinction in the New York State Assembly for 36 years, was the first person to enter the Attica prison during the riots because the prisoners recognized him as a champion for prison reform. I didn't understand it at the time, but when I was 7, when that happened, I didn't know what was going on, but years later, as a teenager, I understood that my father went into that prison not knowing whether he would come out, and he went in any event. My mother, 15 years later, founded what became the largest and most comprehensive alternatives to incarceration for women in the state of New York, in the state's history, and 15 years later, I represented women prisoners incarcerated in District of Columbia prisons. We need to legalize marijuana. We need to expunge the records of every single person who was convicted of recreational use of marijuana so they can turn their lives around. We need to close Rikers Island. We need to increase our alternatives to incarceration. We need to get rid of cash bail. And we need to investigate, and as Attorney General, I would have significantly more oversight over district attorneys who clearly need to be doing much more to make sure that all defendants receive a fair trial. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. I have to tell you, I care a lot about this issue, and I really want to recognize my husband, Randy, who has spent a big part of the last few years working on prison education programs. And in fact, it was because of Randy that I think I'm the first member of Congress in New York history ever to deliver a commencement address behind bars at the Bard College graduation ceremony at Woodburn. And the fact is that sometimes the person, sometimes the solution is the person we thought was the problem. And what I have done in Congress is partner with people like Brian Stevenson, who wrote the wonderful book Just Mercy, and my friend Cory Booker to write legislation. I mean, it's one thing to talk about it, it's another to write laws and to change it. And what I've done in Congress is write legislation that would create a pre-conviction cause of action for people around their right, under Gideon v. Wainwright, to have a real lawyer, to have counsel. And if people had real lawyers, they couldn't be incarcerated so easily. And the fact is that if communities and municipalities and states had to pay for real representation for people there getting ready to throw away, you would have a lot fewer people locked up. You would not have so many nonviolent offenders in prison. We could do so much better than we are right now. The fact is we need to get away with cash bail, that's right. I support decriminalizing and legalizing marijuana, that's important. But the first and most important thing we need to do is we need to start seeing the human beings who are in prison as human beings. And we need to understand there's a real cost to them and us for continuing to keep them locked away. I am very proud that I have 2 formerly incarcerated people on my staff right now. I'm not just talking about it. I believe in this very firmly. And I can tell you that if we can look beyond one mistake or one problem, there's a world we can enter where we can return thousands and thousands of people to their families. That's what we did with the First Step law that my friend Hakeem Jeffries and I worked on and passed through a Republican Congress just a couple of weeks ago. This is a bipartisan opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. There are good people in the conservative movement, religious conservatives who believe in prison reform. We need to seize that opportunity, and we can change our country in the next few years. And as New York Attorney General, I promise you I will be a leader in that fight. Thank you very much.
So I started my morning today talking to 100 individuals who are formerly incarcerated who registered to vote. I spoke to them this morning. I'm a former legal aid attorney, but I'm still a criminal defense attorney because every week someone knocks on my door urging me to go down to court to get their son or daughter out of the system. As someone who was responsible for a second chance program working with the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, where we give individuals a second chance and we expunge their warrants, I'm happy about that. I've worked with the District Attorney of Brooklyn to move forward on an issue of looking at conviction integrity review. And so as the next Attorney General of the state of New York, we will have a conviction review panel in the Office of Attorney General. Obviously, we need to close Rikers Island. And as someone who went before the correction board and urged that we close Rikers Island because of all the sexual abuses, not only against correction officers, but also against inmates, I'm really proud that that passed. We need to legalize marijuana. We need to decriminalize mental illness and poverty, which is responsible for the largest number of people who are Rikers Island. We also need to invest more money in schools and not jails. A lot of the crimes that we have on the book are catch-all crimes, and we need to decriminalize them and make them civil in nature. We also need more alternatives to incarceration. We need to end cash bail. We need to make sure that there are more caseworkers and social workers and individuals in mental health. And we need to invest, obviously, in providing supportive housing and housing for individuals who transition out of the correctional facility here in the state of New York. I have worked on this all of my life, and I am focused on this because each and every day I see individuals who come out of the criminal justice system who are continued to be discriminated against. We can end this, and we can work together. We can work with the state legislature to make this a reality. And last but not least, there's a bill pending on the desk of Governor Cuomo, which would prosecute prosecutors who violate the law. And I am urging, as I urged yesterday, Governor Cuomo to sign that bill because no one is above the law, including prosecutors in every county in the state of New York.
Next question, we'll start off with Ms. Eve, and it's ethics reform. What is your specific plan to root out public corruption in state government, considering the number of elected officials from both parties and top aides to Governor Cuomo who have been convicted and or currently face trial for corruption?
This is an incredibly important issue, and I say that from a personal as well as a candidate perspective because I know what good public servants look like. I view public service as a calling. I'm the daughter of two extraordinary public servants, and too many elected and appointed officials in this state have conducted themselves in a way that is the antithesis of that. I am on record saying, and I would aggressively advocate as Attorney General for an amendment to the state's constitution that would dramatically restructure how we deal with ethics reform in this state. I do not believe it should be one that is almost entirely under the purview of the executive branch. It should be an independent, nonpartisan body based upon the state constitution. That body should have investigative powers, subpoena powers, the power to refer criminal prosecutions to the Attorney General, and it also should oversee campaign finance. I am a strong proponent for public finance. I think $65,000 $100 contributions are obscene, and they shouldn't exist anywhere in our democracy. They are the current law, but we need to have public financing of campaigns. I believe state legislators should get paid more, but that every single dollar of outside income should be banned. so that there is no room for people to be tempted, either proactively or somewhat indirectly. Lastly, I do believe the LLC loophole should be closed. I do not believe in unilateral disarmament, but I have not received and do not expect to receive any LLC resources. But I believe at the end of the day, we need to have public financing of campaigns so that all people, regardless of their means and regardless of where they are in the state, can have the resources that they need if they are the best candidate to run an effective campaign and to win. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. This issue is so important. Money is killing us in politics. It's absolutely killing us. The number one thing we should do is end Citizens United. We've got to end Citizens United. And if you want to know what's at stake, in Washington with the Supreme Court fight, just look at what's happening. We are on the verge of Donald Trump and the Republicans taking over the Supreme Court. And that means on Roe v. Wade to the environment, but especially on money in politics, we are going the wrong way, ladies and gentlemen. And don't look any further than Albany if you want to see corruption in politics. So you better have an attorney general who is independent and can take a sledgehammer to that place and isn't going to be beholden to any of the politicians in Albany for this job. This person ought to be picked by the voters. We've had a lot of game playing in this campaign so far, where they were trying to shut it down earlier. They were trying to have somebody picked on the inside. But the fact is, this is going to the voters good, because the next attorney general ought to be independent of anybody in Washington. I don't care if you're Donald Trump, or I don't care if you're Andrew Cuomo in Albany. I don't care if you're some billionaire on Wall Street. This person needs to stand up and hold those people accountable. End outside income for legislators. End member items for sure. Change the law to make the Attorney General have general authority to investigate public corruption. This office doesn't have that. This office needs a referral from the governor or another senior official to investigate public corruption. Well, what the hell is that? How are you going to investigate the governor if you have to go to the governor and say, can I investigate you? Good luck doing that. So what are you saying to change that? How about we let the Attorney General look at whatever is wrong? That's the number one thing we're going to do, and you better be independent of the governor if you're going to get that changed, right? And so the fact of the matter is, you got to change the law. You got to have somebody who's independent. You're going to have to do things like have a real ethics commission for sure, and outside income. I'd like to see term limits. Honestly, I wish we could throw out half the legislators in Albany and start over again, because I think we have given such a bad name to public service with so much money sloshing around. And by the way, can we have a ban on lobbying by anybody who's a member of Congress or an assemblyman or anybody else, so they don't leave the public office and go trade on it to lobby? Because that is the most corrupting thing I see every day down in Washington, is people do things in public life and then turn around and make money off of it the second they walk out the door. That's not public service. That's feathering your nest. And I wouldn't mind a ban on that, and I'd live right by everybody else. I am not in this for the money, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, you deserve a democracy as good as you are, and money is killing us. Thank you for that question.
In the city council where I served for 10 years, we have term limits. Not only should we have term limits on the state legislature, but we should have term limits on Congress as well.
Amen.
Because we have a significant number of members of Congress who do absolutely nothing. And the reality is that we need more Democrats with steel in their spine to stand up against Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump right now has committed an obstruction of justice, and he should be convicted of that crime and jury tampering after his tweet yesterday. We should end the LLC loophole. We should repeal Citizens United. We should end corporate money, and we should make sure that individuals get small donations. I stand before you as the public advocate of the city of New York because of campaign finance. Most of the individuals who contributed to me during my public advocate race were individuals with no collars, pink collars, primarily women who worked each and every day. That's why I stand before you as the public advocate of the city of New York. We need to make J-Code, we need to tear it down and eliminate J-Code and rebuild it as an independent entity. Someone with no ties to the governor of the state of New York. And last but not least, we need to make sure that the Attorney General has the ability to prosecute corruption and, as was mentioned, does not need approval of the governor of the state of New York. Not only do we need to have a standing commitment and an independent Attorney General to investigate corruption, but also sexual harassment, because time is up in Albany. We also need to focus, and as someone who wrote to Governor Cuomo and to Eric to them, we need a special prosecutor to investigate police, particularly when individuals die at police hands. I'm so glad that they responded and they appointed Eric Snyderman to investigate investigations where individuals unfortunately died at the hands of NYPD. You see, I went into court and sought to get the grand jury minutes related to Eric Garner, because what we saw on that videotape did not lie. We went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And so we need to end that grand jury system, because the district attorney and the police have a unique relationship, and because the grand jury system is opaque. And what we need is to change this anachronistic system and reform the criminal justice system, as well as change ethics rules in the state of Albany. If anyone can get it done, it's someone who's worked in Albany, who's been an attorney in Albany, and who knows how the legislature works in Albany. And I look forward to doing that as the next Attorney General of the state of New York.
If you want somebody who is fully ready to investigate, prosecute, without fear or favor, until we clean up our Albany corruption problem, you got it. Okay, number one, this is my life's work. I know these laws. I know how to enforce these laws. And I was cited extensively by Justice Stevens in the dissent of Citizens United, which we are going to overturn and make the majority. I am currently suing to overturn part of Citizens United. I'm doing the work right now to overturn single candidate super PACs. But let's talk about Albany for a second. Do you guys remember when Andrew Cuomo shut down the Moreland Commission? Somebody's clapping. I'm not clapping, sorry. Whatever you think of the governor, that was wrong. We have a corruption crisis in Albany that is hurting this state, and I spoke up about it then. But here's something you don't know. He forgot to formally rescind the legal powers. So yes, we need some structural change in Albany, but when I get there, we are going to use the existing powers. I'm serious. I'm a really good lawyer. The powers are there now. I'm going to use those existing powers that Andrew Cuomo never formally rescinded. Executive Order 106, you can look it up. To investigate corruption in Albany right now. And the reason you know I will be independent in that is because I am willing to tell you right now, Andrew Cuomo has to take responsibility for this, and to openly disagree with him on choices that he has made. Right now, the head of the current Ethics Commission, Jay Cope, has to resign because it's a mess and it's not actually investigating corruption. His name is Seth Agata. To say that, I have to be willing to confront the governor. You know I'm independent because I always have been. And the other reason you know I'm independent, I don't take any corporate money. Zero corporate PAC money, zero LLC money, and 97% of my donations are people who've given less than $200. So I got independence at my base and in my soul, and I'm ready to take this on. Thank you.
The next question, we're going to start with Mr. Maloney and his civil rights. Donald Trump could undermine civil rights progress more than any other president in modern history. He has fanned the flames of racism, bigotry, xenophobia, and has effectively used the executive action to significantly roll back civil rights enforcement in this country. What needs to be done at the state level to make sure that the civil rights of New Yorkers are protected?
Yeah, this is an important issue to me. I served in Congress with John Lewis, and one of the great experiences I've had in my life is bringing Randy and my 3 kids, who are Latino and African American, to Selma, Alabama for the 50th anniversary of the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And to stand there with President of the United States, Barack Obama, and John Lewis, and to make that march was an emotional and powerful experience. But what I remember actually didn't happen in Alabama. It happened in Washington in the cloakroom, and I was standing at the lunch counter with John Lewis, and it was the day that the Supreme Court struck down part of the Voting Rights Act. And he said to me, Sean, I was standing next to the desk, next to President Johnson when he signed the Voting Rights Act, 48 years ago. And if you told me John Lewis. So he said, little brother, if you told me